I'm so excited for today's podcast. We have Pamela Alcorn of Alcorn Insurance Agency based in New Mexico. I can't wait for her to share the story that she has. Once I was introduced to her and I started to hear her story, I was like, wow, if I was an agent on the other side, this is exactly what I would want to know and hear. So I want to introduce to you today Pamela Alcorn. Thank you for joining us for today's episode of Coffee Talk.
Hey, LaDonna, it's good to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. So, how about you kind of share a little bit of your story? You know, you were in Arkansas and Oklahoma, and how your family came to having an insurance agency in New Mexico.
Sure, I'll be happy to. So basically, I'm from Oklahoma, born and raised in farm country. Anybody who knows Oklahoma might know about Arcadia. It's a little town with a round barn. A lot of people go there to see that. It's kind of a sight. And like I shared with you, LaDonna, my grandparents were from Arkansas. That's where my mom grew up in Waldron. So I spent a lot of time down there. And you were just talking about not having very many tornadoes and kind of being tornado free for a while. I'm very familiar with that. We had a cellar. My granddad would take my sister and I down to the cellar if it even looked like there was going to be a tornado. He'd just leave my mom and my grandmother and say, you guys can stay here if you want, but I'm taking my grandkids. Always very fond memories of fishing and going to Piggly Wiggly and all that kind of stuff. And then grew up in Oklahoma. And my sister and I were fortunate enough to grow up. Didn't think we were fortunate at the time to grow up out in the middle of nowhere in farm country. But as we got older, we realized that that was really a blessing because we could just take off and go horseback riding. We could go walking. There were no cell phones. My mother didn't worry about us much, I don't guess. I'm not sure. Maybe she was happy we stayed gone all day and we couldn't call. But anyway, it was a lot of fun. Had really good childhood memories. Fast forward a little bit, actually went to school in Edmond, graduated from Oklahoma Christian School. So a little shout out to them. I think they're still there in the Edmond area, OCS. Met my husband let me see, it's been a long time ago, but met my husband in 85. We were married in 86, or no, we met in 84, married in 85. In 86, we had a daughter, our oldest. We've got 3 daughters. Oldest daughter's Christina. So I worked out of high school, worked for a dry cleaner there. Then I worked for an eye surgeon, Dr. Widener. So anybody in Oklahoma City that's older might remember Dr. Widener. I know he has since moved away, and I think he's actually passed away, but his wife is still around. But great folks, learned a lot of great work ethic from my parents. We're working for Dr. Widener's office, working with people. My husband, we got married, my husband and his dad had a State Farm office in Edmond, Oklahoma. And it was, I believe, the largest State Farm agency in the Southwest region. If you would have asked me then what I knew about insurance, it would have been like, I think my husband carries it and we have it on our car. I'm pretty sure we might have our house insured. I don't know. Had a baby, decided to stay home and raise my kids and be a stay-at-home mom. Well, in 87, my father-in-law decided to retire. He'd been with State Farm about 32, 33 years, and my husband had about 15 years in. And he was actually the youngest State Farm agent that State Farm had ever hired. My husband was when he joined State Farm. So kind of a little story there. So in 87, we came to northern New Mexico, which my husband and his family used to come up here. It's on the northern New Mexico and southern Colorado border up here in Chama. A little tiny town. If you look it up on the map, you'll barely see it there. So we came up here. He wanted to retire. My father-in-law did retire to northern New Mexico in the mountains. And I've loved the mountains. My other set of grandparents that were from Oklahoma, we came to the mountains all the time. So we came up here, looked around. My oldest daughter was maybe 5 or 6 weeks old at that point. And I fell in love with it because, like I say, it would come with my grandparents. I love the mountains. So when there's a lot to be said for being young and not knowing a lot, because when we decided to move up here, I told my husband, he goes, do you want to move to the mountains? I was like, oh yeah, we can do this. Let's go. I'm ready. I'm ready for this. So when the oldest one was 7 months old, took us about 7 months, we found a place and we moved up here. And like I say, I'm a stay-at-home mom. My husband was like, I'm done with insurance. I've done it since I was 15, 14, working in my dad's office. I'm going to do something else. So he goes out and gets his real estate license. And I'm one of those, I'm just like, you go, hon, whatever you want to do to put food on the table, I'll just back you up. I'll just stay home, take care of the kids, and you can do this. So when I was pregnant with our second daughter, he comes home and he'd been doing real estate for a couple of years. And he said, I think I'm going to get back into the insurance business because we're not going to be able to eat for much longer if we're just selling real estate. Because here in northern New Mexico, you were lucky if you sold maybe 2 or 3 properties a year, you know. So I told him, I said, that's good. Insurance, I think people have to have it, but I'll back you up, whatever you need me to do. So State Farm had told him when he left, they said, anywhere you go, we will open you another office. You just get back in contact with us. So he calls State Farm first. And State Farm says, well, we'd love to open you up an office anywhere except Chama. The demographics aren't good. There's not a lot of, there's not a lot of people. We just don't see that you're going to be able to make it there. But if you move to Santa Fe or Albuquerque or Las Cruces or one of these bigger towns, Farmington, we'd be happy to put you back into business. Loved you as an agent. Your dad will get you going. So he comes home and talks to me, and I said, no, I've had my share living in the big city. I really don't want to live in the big city again. I said, so are there other options? So he goes, well, there's something called an independent agency. He goes, I don't know what that's about, but I'll check it out. I said, okay, well, you check it out and let me know what you need me to do. So like I say, I'm pregnant with the second daughter. So you fast forward, this is in January. She's born in June. Lord, don't let me get that wrong, because that child will never forget me if I forget the month that she's born in. So anyway, she's born in June. He says, well, the real estate office he worked at was a little small office. It was a bigger office, but his office was pretty small because it was an old house they'd remodeled. And he said, I need you to come and type letters. I've got this book about this thick, and it gives me all of the insurance companies that write New Mexico. So this kind of dates back, it kind of dates me because this is back in '89. I know, I just don't look like I've been around that long, but it's okay. I have been, I promise. So anyway, you had typewriters. You couldn't type it up on the computer. So every letter had to be typed up on the typewriter. So I came in, I'd bring the kids in, leave the oldest one at my mother-in-law's, bring the baby into the office in the carrier and put her there. And I type up these letters. I mean, hundreds of letters, LaDonna, that we sent out to companies, because all he could get to appoint him at the time was Progressive and Foremost. Progressive and Foremost are out there, and they wanted to appoint whoever they could. They were looking to grow, and they didn't matter. So he had those. But unfortunately, it wasn't enough. We needed more. So I would send out letters to all of these companies, and I'd send them out. I'm always real optimistic, so we'd send out like 60 or 70 letters, and I'd ask him about a week later. I'd say, have you gotten any responses from those letters? And he would tell me, well, no, I haven't gotten, very many responses. Then he'd come home after a couple of weeks and say, well, I'm being turned down. I said, why would they turn you down? You're a great guy. You got a lot to offer. Like, they need an insurance agency in this town. And they had 3, by the way, when we started this. Okay. They had 3 little agencies here. 2 of them were captive agents and one of them was independent. These people were all like maybe middle to late 60s. So they were like, one of them, the minute he hung his sign out there and it said Ron Alcorn Insurance, their sign came down and they were like, boom, we're out of here. We just been waiting for somebody to come in so we could, people would have an insurance agent. The other 2, gradually after about a year, they kind of went by the wayside as well because they were looking to retire, but nobody wanted to buy their agencies here. So anyway, I told him, I said, just hang in there. I said, you're going to get something. So like I say, I'm always optimistic. I'm kind of a go-getter. I can't really sit still. So from the time the kids were in school, I was always volunteering at the schools. By this time we have the 3rd one, and he's doing okay, plugging along with these 2 companies. I think he eventually got Dairyland in and he was working with them, still running real estate. He had a friend that they actually went into real estate business together and kind of broke out on their own. So he tells me one day, I'm volunteering at the school. I'm cleaning houses. I've got a friend that we've got a matting and framing shop. So we're, doing art, matting and framing. Gosh, I had a friend that bought the local drugstore here. She was a pharmacist. Her husband was a physical therapist. It was hard to find help. So I told them, I'll help you out. So I had this schedule, and I had everybody kind of penciled in between the kids getting in school and volunteering at the schools and all this other stuff. So he comes home one day and he says, well, things are looking up a little bit. He said, but either you're going to have to come in and help me answer the phones, or I'm going to have to hire somebody. Well, I did all the budgeting. So I look and I'm like, well, I'll tell you one thing, you're not paying anybody to answer the phones. You're not quite that good yet. I said, but I will come in and help you answer the phones and I'll file. So I always tell everybody, it's one thing to work with your spouse. It's another thing to work across the desk, because the office we were in was literally it wasn't even 100 square feet. Maybe it was 80. And we had one little like countertop. And so we worked across from each other. And I would answer the phone. He was out showing real estate. I'd take care of any clients that came in for payments or whatever, little stuff. So I've etched out a few hours there. And I'd been there for about a year. And he goes, "You need to go get your license." And I said, "Yeah, I'm not a salesman. You're good. You sell insurance and real estate all day. I'll just answer your phone." you know. So we're coming up on 2 years in the office, and we actually moved into a little bit bigger space. And by bigger, I mean maybe it was 150 square feet. So I want you to get the idea that it was like huge. It was still kind of small. So he says, "You need to get your license." And I said, "Man, I really hated going to school. I mean, when I got out of high school, that was it. That's why I didn't go to college. I was like, I just don't do well with tests. I don't like being in the classroom, more of a visual, like hands-on kind of learner." He goes, "No, I'll get you the books and you'll do fine." So he gets me the books and I start studying and study for, I don't know, 6 or 7 months, doing it at home between taking care of the kids, it's homework and all that kind of stuff. Everybody who balances a family knows what's going on, how that works. So I gradually have more and more people coming in, and they're wanting, they're wanting different types of insurance. Businesses were coming in and saying, "We want to insure this commercial insurance, or we want to do this." And I had to turn them away because I couldn't. I had a couple of friends in like Santa Fe and Albuquerque that had agencies, and I would refer them to them. So one day I'm sitting in the office. Oh, and I get my license, pass the test the first time. I come out from taking that test, and I'm telling you, it's the most nerve-wracking thing. My husband goes, "Well, how'd you do?" Because he's out in the parking lot waiting for me. And I said, "Well, I'm really, really worried because at that time, I know now when you take it, because I've taken my life and health, you go in and do it all on the computer. But this was all paper, this was the books. I don't know how long you've done it, LaDonna, but you look quite a bit younger than me, so I'm not sure. But it's, you had the books and you opened them up and you had to fill in the little thing. So we sat at a table with like 5 other people, got my look, I fill it all in. And before we took the test, there's this woman there and we're talking, and I wasn't really nervous about it. I was like, "Yeah, I've studied and I'm good." And she goes, "So how many times have you taken the test?" And I said, "Well, this is my first time." And she goes, "Oh, honey, good luck. This is my 6th." I was like, "Oh, holy of all holies, please help me pass this test the first time. I don't want to come back." So I go in there, there's 3 men and 2 other women, and we finish, and I'm the first one that's done. And I'm like, "Oh my God, these people have all taken this test at least once or twice. I'm screwed because there's no way I could be done 30 minutes before them. They all look way more like they know what they're doing than I do." So, and back then they didn't give you the results right away. You had to wait to get them in the mail. So I go out, my husband goes, "Well, how'd you do?" He goes, "You didn't change any answers, did you?" I said, "No, you told me not to change any answers." And he goes, "That's right. Don't ever change them. Just leave them alone." I was like, "Oh, I might change 1 or 2, but," I said, "I got done for everybody else. I'm pretty sure I've won." So I get the test, get my results in the mail about 2 weeks later, and I passed. So we like went home, had a party for like, "Woohoo, this is good. I'm good. I can do this. I passed that test the first time." So anyway, so I'm turning people away. We've got stuff going on. I've got a few companies. I'm trying to remember. We'd reached out to. I always love to tell this story because I'd reached out to several companies, and one of them was Safeco. And the Safeco rep called me, and Linda Murray, love her. I hope eventually she hears this. I just love that woman. She's since retired from Safeco, but she's like one of the best reps that I had. And I remember contacting her, and she said, "Well, I've talked to everybody, and Pam, the demographics just aren't good." She said, "You're just not going to make it there." And I said, "Oh, well, that's interesting. That's a nice perception, but that's not how I perceive things to be." I said, "We'll be good." Okay. So I move on to the next company. Basically the only companies that we had, like I said, we had Progressive, we had Foremost, and then we had a company that came in that was called Farmers Alliance. And do they still operate in Arkansas?
I don't think so. No.
Okay. Because they were big in the Midwest. So they were big like in Oklahoma, Arkansas, and then they moved into New Mexico to try it out. Well, and we had almost everything with them, because they were great on homeowners. They would bundle with autos. They had a really good BOP, and they had little commercial policies and stuff. So we had, like, I would say 90% of our business with them. So we had a gentleman that used to come into the office all the time. Insurance people attract insurance people. So one day he's driving by. He has a second home up here. He's from Albuquerque at the time, and he said, we've got a big insurance agency in Albuquerque. And he said, "I just want to kind of throw something out there." He said, asked me about the companies and how business was. And I said, "Well, business is good, but I'm concerned because there's a lot of it I can't write because I don't have access to the companies." He goes, "Well, have you ever heard of SIAA?" I said, no, can't say that I've heard of SIAA. I kind of live in my little hole up here, raising my kids, going to work and going home. And like I say, if you look up New Mexico, it's this little tiny town. And he said, well, he explained to us what it was. And I said, wow, it sounds really great. And he said, and at the time we still had our property in Oklahoma for sale. So when we moved here, we had buyers for it and we thought we were all set. And then we got moved up here and the deal fell through. So property's still sitting there like 10 or 12 years later. It's still sitting there, but we had somebody looking at it. We had another offer on the table. So his name was Carl. So I said, love Carl and Beverly, love those guys. So I said, I really think that it's something to do, but I said, right now it's just not in our budget. So Carl, he just kept plugging along. Every time he'd come to town, him and Beverly take us out to dinner, and he'd say, I just really want you to think about this. I think it'd be a great opportunity, and we'll work with you. We'll work with you, and we'll work out a budget. And I said, no, we really don't like to have to borrow money. I said, but we've got this property for sale, and if it sells, then we'll go ahead and move forward. We'll talk about it. So it looks like the property is going to sell. So my husband and I, Ron, we sit down, we talk about it, and I said, well, what do you think? And he's a little bit older than I am. Yours. I'm giving this to you now. I've worked all these years. I've done it. I feel like you've got it under control. You can grow the agency. And I was like, well, I'm just this little farm girl from a little tiny town in Oklahoma. I don't know about growing a business, but I definitely think we need more companies. So, because if you'd asked me back then, just like if you'd asked me in 85 when we got married, if I was going to be an insurance agent, I would have went, yeah, no, I don't think so. Not in my future. If you had asked me moving 10 years forward, if I was going to run a business and have employees, I would have went, yeah, I don't even know how to do that, where to start, So here he is asking me this. And I said, well, I do know that if you don't grow, you die, no matter what it is. If it's a business, it's a town, if it's your education, whatever it is, if you don't put yourself out there and you don't grow, you're not going to make it. So he said, well, if you want to do this, you want to take the agency and you want to move forward, if you feel like it's what we need to do, we need to do it. I said, okay. So the next time Carl came up, we closed on the property. And I told my husband, I said, let's not tell him. He's going to be so excited because he asks us every time, are you ready to join SIAA yet? Are you ready? So he comes up and he's like, Beverly and I, we're up here in town visiting. We want to take you guys out to dinner. And I'm like, okay. So we go sit down. And I said, Carl, guess what? It's like, what? I said, we're ready. He goes, what are you ready for? I said, we're ready to join SIAA. Like, you got me all pumped up. You still got a spot for me, right? And he was so excited. So anyway, we joined SIAA. One of the best decisions we made. I never will forget. I think I told you this part of the story. We just joined maybe a week, 2 weeks at the most. I think maybe it was a week. I was helping a neighbor with a yard sale, and my husband drives up and he says, man, I don't know who you've got on your side, but you definitely made the right decision. And he hands me a letter. And this letter is a letter from Farmers Alliance that they're pulling out of New Mexico because they weren't profitable for too many years. They just couldn't do it. They'd had too many losses. So within that year, they were going to pull back all those. They were going to non-renew all those policies that we had. And I mean, it would have put us under because we would have had nobody else to put the companies with. And SIAA from the beginning, Carl and Beverly were super supportive. The staff they had at the time that they had appointed to help everybody was supportive. And so, I told my husband, I said, dude, I believe in the power of prayer and I really think God has your back. So I said, I prayed about it before we joined and I felt like this is what we needed to do. And I said, I am really grateful that we're blessed that we did this. So with that being said, we get access to the companies. Anybody who's thinking about joining SIAA, who has ever come to me and thought about it, I always encourage them because it was a lifesaver for us. And just the support that we got was incredible. I didn't even know that type of support existed for anybody who wanted to run a business or grow in any way. So, you fast forward a little bit, we finally, how it is, you work under the SIAA, under their master codes until you can get your own subcodes so you've got enough. So guess who walks into my office Monday? Safeco rep. And she says, so Pam, it's Linda. I said, oh, Linda, I've talked to you on the phone, but it's nice to meet you in person. She goes, yeah. She says, so I was driving up here from Albuquerque and I thought, wow, there's like really nothing between. Once you leave Espanola, there's nothing between here and there, which is about 100 miles, maybe no more. Yeah, about 100 miles. And I said, yeah. And she goes, you've been sending Safeco a lot of business. And I said, well, I told you if you'd give me the chance, I would, but you just told me the demographics weren't there. I said, but sometimes God has bigger plans, so you just got to have faith. And so she laughed. Her and I became good friends. And I never will forget. She was one of my, I believe that marketing reps are super important because they can really just be your little cheerleader, and they can also get things going for you that you can't really get done. So I said, yeah, Linda, aren't you surprised? Because you thought the demographics weren't here, but look, there's more here than you can see. So we would go to the SIAA meetings, that you have once or twice a year, and they give out awards and all that kind of stuff. And I would go, and I would always sit in the back because I'm just not a front row kind of person. I like to sit in the back and just absorb everything. So she had told me, she says, "What this meeting that you're coming to, next month," she said, "I really would like for you to sit in the front." I don't know, there's always probably 7,500 people there. I said, "No, Linda, I'm sitting in the back. That way I got a fast escape in case somebody's picking on me or something, I can leave." We'd always joke. So I go to this meeting, and they were all, like I say, they would give out awards, and she gets up there and she talks, and she's talking about this agent that's like made the most growth. And I'm just back there and I'm like, wow, that's really awesome. Like, whoever this is, they did a really good job. And so she holds up this plaque and she goes, "Pam Alcorn, can you please come to the front?" And I was like, "Me? You want me to come to the front?" "No, I'm going out the back. I don't do awards." And there's no way my husband would keep track of all the growth stuff. I just wrote business. He's always done like all the books and kept track of all of that. And he just kind of keeps it to himself, I guess, because I didn't have any idea. I mean, I just knew I was busy writing business. And literally it was just him and I, that was it. We didn't have any employees. So people started asking me after that meeting how I had grown that much, what did I do? I must have had really great employees. And I was like, well, I don't have any employees. I'm not at that spot where I feel like I can afford them, but this is how we've grown. And I said, my very first thing was, you always treat people the way you want to be treated. I said, I grew up with that from my dad. I said, that was drilled into me over and over. And I said, it's really true. As long as you treat people the way you want to be treated, I just don't feel like you can go wrong. So, just get kind of back on track with SIAA a little bit. We actually are under a different person now because Carl and Beverly ended up retiring. And then their SIAA master agency was bought out by an agency that's our master agency out of Arizona. And Dan Skinner is the head of that. So I'll give him a little plug because Dan Skinner, bless his heart, is an awesome man.